On today's episode of True Echo, where the unheard finally echo through history, we bring you a story of silence, genius, and an elite world that never saw her coming. When a powerful man mocked a quiet black woman on the golf course, he didn't know she was the very ghost of his greatest loss, and that she held a secret far bigger than any game. Stay until the end. What she reveals doesn't just change the course, it changes lives. The morning sunlight slid over the hills of Greenwell Reserve like melted gold. Dew still clung to the manicured blades of imported Bermuda grass, shimmering beneath the elite silence of money. This wasn't just a golf course. It was a kingdom, its gates lined with privilege and silence, its members with names you only heard in headlines. And Ava Elridge didn't belong here. Not really. She stood under the hitting bay's awning, tall and still. Her dark skin gleamed beneath a black visor. Her zip-up jacket hugged her form like armor, and on her left hand, just beneath her thumb, a pale scar marked old pain. She never explained it. Not to anyone. To the club she was that woman. To one man she was coach. "Widen your stance," she said quietly. Jordan shifted, long limbs adjusting. At 25 he looked every bit the prototypical golfer. Blonde, sharp-jawed, a frame sculpted by privilege. But the way he listened now, focused and wordless, told a different story. Ava had beaten him 6 months ago. No warm-up, half a bag of clubs. By the 9th hole, the smirk had bled off his face like ink in water. Since then he followed her every word like gospel. "You're gripping the club like it owes you money," Ava muttered. Jordan cracked a smile. "You're saying I've still got daddy issues?" "No," she said, eyes still on his swing. "I'm saying your wrist does." The ball cracked through the air clean and true. It soared and dropped neatly on the edge of the green. Jordan turned, waiting. Ava gave nothing. Not even a nod. "You ever compliment anybody?" he asked. "Not when they're still thinking about it," she replied. "Try again." He chuckled but didn't argue. He teed another ball. Ava stepped back, brushing a finger over the scar on her hand as sunlight danced on it. She hadn't meant to coach again. Especially not here. Greenwell didn't welcome outsiders. The only reason she was here was because Jordan's father, a senator, had pulled a favor. And she hated favors. But Jordan had changed. And something in her couldn't walk away from that. Then came the sound that always spoiled peace. Expensive shoes on concrete and laughter that smelled like entitlement. Owen Mallister. He strode in like he owned the place, polo crisp, skin tanned with precision. A former finalist, a brand deal darling. To the world he was golf royalty. To Ava he was history. And he hated that. "Didn't realize the club was offering charity clinics now," Owen called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. Jordan straightened. Ava didn't move. Owen came closer, eyes raking over Jordan and stopping on Ava. "You hiding out here? Or just auditioning for a sympathy documentary?" Jordan's fists clenched. "She doesn't need to answer you," he said. Owen grinned, wide and cruel. "You training with someone who's not even in the books? Not a single tournament to her name." "She beat me," Jordan snapped. "Exactly," Owen chuckled. "You're the punchline, not proof." Ava still said nothing. Her eyes were on the ball. "Hit again," she said softly. Jordan hesitated. She looked up just once. "Come." Unshaken. "Hit the damn ball." And he did. A line drive shot even better than the last. Owen's smile faltered for a breath. But Ava didn't look at him. She was already turning, moving to the next station, Jordan trailing close behind. Owen lingered, arms crossed. Watching. "Tell you what," he said, stepping forward. 9 holes. You and me. Prove you're not just playing with smoke." Ava didn't answer. Jordan looked at her, waiting. "You afraid your little monk routine won't hold up?" Owen pressed, voice dripping sarcasm. Ava's gaze didn't flinch. "I'm not here to prove anything. Especially not to you." Owen smirked. "Of course you're not. People like you never are. You just show up and expect applause." Jordan stepped forward, fire in his throat. "I'll play him," he said. "If you won't." Ava didn't blink. She stared at him for a long moment, reading him like a ledger. Then she nodded once. Owen's grin spread like oil. "Great. Let's give the spectators a show." They headed to the first tee, a small crowd forming, golfers in pastel polos sipping cocktails, whispering behind sunglasses. A camera lens clicked quietly from the shade, a young black filmmaker with a YouTube channel barely breaking 500 views. He zoomed in. Ava stayed behind Jordan just enough to steady, not to control. "Visualize your third shot," she whispered. Jordan swung. The ball carved through the air, bending off the expected path, cutting across trees and landing deep near the green. Silence. Then a murmur. Was that luck? Ava's fingers twitched. Not to hide the scar. To remember. By the third hole, Jordan was one stroke ahead. He didn't play louder. He played cleaner. He played like someone who had learned to listen. Ava's teachings weren't about distance or drama. They were about intuition, the quiet calculus of the terrain, the gentle lean of a green, the whisper of wind. Jordan played with presence. And presence was everything. Owen, on the other hand, was starting to tighten. His swing, normally fluid, theatrical, showed signs of strain. He cracked jokes between holes, laughed too loudly, adjusted his glove repeatedly. It was the behavior of a man who wasn't playing the course anymore. He was playing the ghost behind the silence. The one standing just off the green. Watching. Eva. She had barely moved. Her arms folded, her eyes narrowed beneath the visor, unreadable. She didn't cheer. She didn't blink when Jordan's ball skipped a hazard by inches. She didn't even react when Owen drove a perfect arc over the water hazard on the fifth hole. But people were watching her now. By the sixth, murmurs had shifted. No longer about Jordan but about her. That woman. She's not just a coach, is she? She's the one who never speaks. Is she the reason he's playing like this? Whispers in the crowd bloomed like weeds. And Owen felt it. His smile turned brittle. He began to talk more, louder, filling space that no longer belonged to him. By the eighth hole he sliced his shot into a bunker. Ava said nothing. Jordan didn't smile. He just walked the course one hole at a time the way she had taught him, not chasing victory but shaping it. On the final green, Owen lined up his putt with shaking hands. He missed it by 2 inches. It wasn't a bad stroke. It was a broken moment. Jordan, calm and collected, tapped his in. A round of sharp applause followed, not booming but precise like punctuation. As Jordan shook Owen's hand, Ava stepped past them both. She didn't gloat. She didn't even glance at the crowd. But Owen saw her scar, just a flicker of pale skin along her hand as she passed, and his breath caught. Recognition flickered in his eyes. Years ago, behind closed doors in a private match under sodium lights, a nameless black woman had taken something from him. Not just a win. His reputation. His deal. His pride. And now she stood before him again. Not invisible anymore. The footage hit the internet before sundown. 37 seconds. One camera. No names. Just a question. Who is she? Lyle, the young filmmaker, uploaded the clip without fancy editing, no hashtags, just that simple title. And in 12 hours, it hit over 100,000 views. In 3 days the silence was gone. Ava sat in a small hotel conference room, cream-colored walls humming with fluorescent light, as her phone lit up with requests, questions, accusations. A printed article sat in her lap. No byline. No mercy. Former underground golf ringer revealed, used backroom matches to secure public land for private gains? The article included a surveillance photo. Her scarred hand on a putter grip. And beside it, a grainy still from 5 years ago, a silhouette of a woman swinging under floodlights, posture unmistakable. It didn't take much. Owen Mallister had been waiting. He remembered that match. Remembered the land he lost. That land had since become a youth shelter, a shelter Ava had fought quietly to build. But Owen didn't care about kids. He cared about his story. So he painted her as a thief, a backdoor fixer, a manipulator, someone who used children to justify corruption. And the committee listened. The next morning, a white envelope slid under Ava's hotel room door. Miss Elridge, kindly clarify your past affiliations prior to the upcoming invitational or forfeit your position. The threat was polite. Deadly. Outside her window, Jordan paced in the courtyard, waiting. He'd called her 6 times. She hadn't answered. Not because she didn't trust him, but because she didn't know if she had the strength to step forward again. She touched the scar. You weren't supposed to find me again, she whispered. You weren't supposed to matter this much. She remembered that game in the desert. 3 men betting a city shelter on a round of golf. She hadn't played to win. She'd played to stop something. And she had. But she had vanished afterward as agreed. Now they were dragging her back. Not to ask for answers, but to force her into silence or spectacle. The door creaked open. Jordan, she said softly, not turning. You okay? He asked. No. He sat down across from her, face raw with frustration. They want a rematch. You and Owen. Public. Otherwise, I'm disqualified too. Ava looked at him. Then don't play. His voice cracked. This isn't just about a game, Ava. If you walk away again, they win. They'll rewrite your story and no one will ever know why you were there in the first place. She exhaled slowly. I've survived worse than being misunderstood. That's not the point, he snapped, fists clenched. You shouldn't have to. Pause. I don't care about trophies. But I care that you don't vanish. Not again. Ava turned to the window. Her eyes dropped to her hand. The scar. Then softly she spoke. Tell the committee I'll play. The sun beat down on the invitational course like a judgment. Unforgiving. Brutal in its clarity. Cameras buzzed, crowd chatter crackled just under the surface, and reporters leaned over velvet ropes like wolves in linen. Ava Elridge stood alone near the first tee box, her visor casting a deep shadow over her unreadable face. She wasn't there for applause. She wasn't even there for redemption. She was there for truth. Owen Mallister swaggered onto the green like he was walking a red carpet. The cameras loved him. He played to them, smiled for them. A custom glove on one hand, a championship logo stitched across his chest. If this were a movie, he'd have already won, by charm, by lineage, by the sheer arrogance of his presence. But the course doesn't lie. And Ava knew it better than anyone. She teed up her first ball, drew a breath, and struck. The swing was clean, elegant, but short. Intentionally short. The murmurs started almost immediately. That's her opening shot? Wasn't she supposed to be the genius? Maybe Owen was right. Owen smirked, feeding off it. He drove hard and clean, landing 15 yards ahead. He raised a hand to the crowd like royalty. But Ava didn't flinch. She adjusted her glove and walked. Silent. Still. Watching the sky, not the man beside her. By the third hole, she trailed by 3 strokes. By the fifth, the press began reshaping their stories mid-sentence. This match might confirm the rumors. Is she even qualified to be here? Jordan stood on the sidelines, fists clenched so tight his knuckles paled. He recognized what she was doing, but no one else did. She wasn't playing the man. She was playing the course. Reading it. Feeling it. Waiting. Then came the 6. She changed her club at the last second. The gallery leaned in. She struck, not with strength but with softness. The ball lifted with an arc so graceful, so strange it looked wrong, until it curved around the hill and landed inches from the pin. Gasp. Then stunned silence. Jordan whispered to himself, she's turning the wind. Owen's laugh faltered for the first time. He missed his shot wide and muttered under his breath. Ava said nothing. On the 7th she adjusted her tempo. Each swing tighter, leaner, as though she were rewriting the rhythm of the game. She used the slopes like allies. She used shadows for sight lines. She played with a kind of mastery no textbook could teach. It was lived. Breathed. By the 8th they were tied. The murmurs now. Reverent. Did you see that backspin? She knew it would roll like that. She's not following him. He's chasing her now. On the 9th and final hole, Owen's bravado cracked. His drive was too strong. It skipped the edge of the fairway and clipped the rough. Ava didn't look at him. She watched the flag swaying in the crosswind, then the trees to the west. She was listening again. Not to the crowd, but to the course. She teed up, exhaled, and swung. The ball cut diagonally, confusing the commentators, until it caught a gust of wind she'd calculated and landed just 2 feet from the cup. A moment passed. Then the silence changed. Not doubt. Not confusion. Owen missed his putt. Ava tapped hers in. She straightened, pulled off her glove, and stepped back from the green. No smile. No pose. Just presence. The crowd surged forward. Press, reporters, influencers with lav mics clipped to pastel collars. Miss Elridge, do you deny the allegations? Are you here to confess or prove something? Is this redemption or a distraction? And then Owen, flushed, sweating, desperate, stepped forward and pointed. She gamed the system. That land wasn't hers, it was a zoning deal. A favor. She rigged it. Cameras turned. For a beat, no one spoke. Then a quiet, measured voice cut through the chaos. She didn't rig anything. A man stepped through the crowd, tall and composed. Charcoal suit. Silver hair. A quiet authority that needed no introduction. He walked to Ava's side and placed a hand gently on her back. This woman is Ava Elridge, my wife, he said, steady and clear. And the land in question has belonged to the Elridge Foundation for 5 years. It was donated, not bought. It is now a center for homeless and at-risk youth, opening in 3 weeks. Gasp. Flashbulbs. He lifted a gray folder. City records. Zoning approvals. Building permits. All public. All clean. And then, another voice. Lyle's assistant, holding up her phone. I have something too. Footage from 2 years ago, when Mr. Mallister tried to rezone that same land for a private golf club. He called it abandoned property. These documents say otherwise. Reporters turned. Cameras zoomed. Owen stammered, reaching for words that wouldn't come. Ava? She didn't move. Because sometimes truth doesn't shout. Lands. Right at your feet. Undeniable. The chaos around the green crescendoed as cameras pivoted away from Ava and zeroed in on Owen Mallister. His voice caught in his throat. The cocky grin was gone. All that remained was sweat along his brow and a desperate, unraveling glare. The press swarmed. Questions now turned sharp, not towards Ava, but toward the man who had weaponized assumption. Mr. Mallister, is it true you tried to rezone the Elridge land under false pretenses? Were you aware it had already been registered to the foundation? Why did you omit your prior dealings with the same parcel of land? Owen backed away, his words tumbling out in broken fragments. I didn't know she was hiding behind. This isn't about the land she used kids to. But the air had shifted. No one was buying the narrative anymore. He wasn't the underdog. He wasn't the hero exposing corruption. He was the man who got caught. And Ava? She stood still, expression unreadable. Not gloating. Not shaken. Simply grounded. Her husband remained at her side, his hand firm but gentle on her back, like he was holding the final piece of her truth in place. Jordan stepped forward, pushing through the crowd. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. He simply stood next to her. Together they said everything without speaking. Reporters turned toward Ava again, this time with a new tone, less accusatory, more curious. More reverent. What made you stay silent until now? Why return to the spotlight after all these years? What does this moment mean for the foundation, for your students? Ava looked past the microphones, her eyes locking on the camera held by Lyle, still filming. She saw the red light blinking, the lens fixed on her, the story still being written. She stepped forward slightly, just enough to clear the crowd's shadow. And for the first time she spoke for herself. I didn't come here to clear my name, she said, voice low but strong. I came because the work I do off the course matters more than any trophy. More than this match. More than anyone's opinion. Pause. I stayed quiet because I knew the kids needed protection more than I needed credit. But when lies threaten to erase truth, silence becomes complicity. She looked toward Jordan. He reminded me of that. A flicker of emotion crossed her face, brief, almost invisible. But it was real. For the first time, Ava let herself be seen. Then she stepped back. The press didn't know what to say. Because in that moment, Ava Elridge wasn't a scandal. She wasn't a mystery. She was a truth that no longer needed to be proven. A week passed. The story exploded. Headlines flipped. News anchors who once questioned Ava's legitimacy now ran exposés on the genius who outsmarted the system. The video of her final swing, cut alongside footage of the youth shelter's ribbon cutting, went viral. Lyle's YouTube channel crossed 1 million subscribers in under 10 days. And Owen? He vanished. No press conferences. No brand endorsements. The Golf Commission issued a formal ban, indefinite suspension pending investigation into ethics violations. His coach, it turned out, had been funneling documents about city zoning deals to investors in exchange for tournament spots and payouts. Ava read the article in silence from a small hotel room in Denver, then closed it and never opened it again. She didn't need revenge. She had the truth. Jordan, meanwhile, had qualified for the national championship. Not because of Ava, but because of who he'd become under her quiet tutelage. He no longer needed compliments. He didn't crave praise. He played clean with intent and with awareness. He was no longer trying to prove something to the world, but to honor what he'd learned in its shadow. The day of the championship arrived with a sky so wide it looked painted. Jordan stood on the stage, trophy in hand, name etched in silver. Cameras flashed. Speeches rolled. The crowd cheered. But he kept looking past the lights. Past the velvet rope. Past the sponsors and suits. He was looking for someone who didn't wear credentials. Ava stood in the far corridor, away from it all, wearing a simple black turtleneck and old khakis. No pass, no applause. She leaned against the wall with the folded program in one hand, her old glove in the other. Her chest didn't rise fast. Her heart didn't race. But something inside her shifted. Like the foundation beneath a tree giving way to deeper roots. The crowd hadn't seen her slip away. But someone had. At the staff gate she paused. Gravel crunched behind her. Small feet. Then, arms around her waist. A little girl in red sneakers, eyes shining. Two boys followed, clutching her sleeves. Behind them, a woman stood still, hands trembling. "She told me you were the one," the woman said. "The reason my daughter sleeps in a real bed now." Ava didn't reply. She knelt, brushing a curl from the little boy's forehead. "Are you the lady from the building?" he asked. "The one who gave it to us?" Ava paused, then whispered, "No one gave you anything. You took it back." A soft flash snapped. A reporter, half lost from the crowd, raised his camera. He didn't speak. He just watched. And for the first time, Ava didn't turn away. She let the photo happen. She let herself be seen. Not as a myth, not as a scandal, but as herself. She stood in the glow of a single streetlight, surrounded by children whose lives had changed not because of her swing, but because of her silence. And finally, Ava Elridge smiled. 3 weeks later, the Elridge Foundation's new youth center opened its doors. The building sat on the very land Ava had fought for, 3 acres of once contested real estate now transformed into a sanctuary of possibility. It had classrooms and sleeping quarters, a counseling wing, a library, a rooftop garden, and, of course, a putting green. Not because golf was the focus, but because Ava understood its language. In her world, silence had always been a tool, but now for these kids, she wanted it to be a space for calm, not survival. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, the mayor spoke, local news cameras rolled, and Jordan gave a short, unscripted speech about second chances. But Ava? She didn't take the mic. She stood near the back, arms folded, flanked by the children she had met at the championship weeks before. The little girl in red sneakers clutched her hand tightly as if afraid she'd vanish again. Ava squeezed back. Not with force. Just presence. A young reporter approached her with a mic. She politely declined the interview. "Why won't you speak?" he asked. She looked out over the center's courtyard, where a dozen kids were laughing, racing each other along the ramps and walkways. A mural was being painted on the back wall, the outline of it just beginning to take form. A silhouette of a golfer, not mid-swing but mid-stand, body still, grounded, watching the horizon. "They're speaking now," she said. "That's enough." The press eventually moved on. The internet found new scandals. The headlines faded. But Ava's name, once whispered and doubted, now lived in school curricula on sports equity, in op-eds about urban development, in quiet conversations between black mothers and their daughters, about dignity, resilience, and playing the long game. Lyle, the young filmmaker who had captured that pivotal match, released a full documentary titled Stillness, the Ava Elridge story. It was picked up by a major streaming platform. Critics called it surgical, haunting, revolutionary in its refusal to dramatize what was already dramatic. When asked if she'd do press for the film, Ava declined again. She only asked for one thing, that the final scene not be the match or the press conference, or even the youth center's opening. Instead, she asked for something smaller. A still photo. Of 3 children holding her hands, standing on the sidewalk under a streetlight. The caption? "Truth doesn't shout." One evening, after the center had closed for the night, Ava sat alone on the edge of the rooftop garden. Jordan climbed the stairs behind her, still in his training gear, his golf glove sticking from his back pocket. He sat beside her without speaking. The city lights twinkled below. A distant siren wailed and faded. In the flower bed near the corner, wind chimes made from broken clubs clinked softly. "They still ask about you," he said eventually. She glanced sideways. "The kids?" she asked. He nodded. "One of them tried to mimic your swing the other day. It was awful." She smirked. "Just barely." "Good. That means he's got potential." He laughed. Then, softer, "You know they want you to coach full-time now." Ava didn't reply. "You're not done," he added. "I can feel it." Her eyes dropped to her palm, to the scar. Even now, years later, it tingled when the air turned cold. "I'm not sure if the world's done with me," she said. He looked at her. "That's never been your concern before." A long pause. She turned to him, her expression unreadable but softened. "Why'd you stay?" He blinked. "What?" "All this," she gestured vaguely toward the center. "The interviews. The tournaments. Even after they doubted you for being trained by someone like me." Jordan thought for a moment. "Because when everyone else was watching the ball, you taught me to watch the ground." That got a real smile from her. The kind that lived in her eyes. And for a moment they sat in silence, not heavy or strained but companionable. Like 2 notes in harmony. That fall, a new application appeared in the city zoning office. It was a proposal for a second youth center. This one in a neighborhood where development had been stalled for decades. The name on the paperwork? Jordan Matthews. But the foundation listed was Elridge. And beneath the signature line was a single hand-drawn symbol. A scar. Not as a wound, but a watermark. A signature of quiet power. Winter arrived early that year, dusting the city in a frost that clung to window panes and turned the youth center's rooftop garden into a silver quilt of stillness. Ava didn't mind. She had always preferred the cold. It made the world quieter, sharper, honest. One evening, long after the last child had been picked up and the halls swept clean, Ava wandered the garden alone, gloved hands buried in her coat pockets. Below her the city hummed. Distant sirens. Flickering neon. A world unchanged on the surface, but she felt it. Something had shifted. The door behind her creaked open. It was Lyle. He stepped out tentatively, holding something under his arm. A bundle of printed photos, fresh from the editor. His hair was a mess. His boots were muddy. But his eyes were reverent. "I didn't mean to bother you," he said. "You didn't," she replied. He approached slowly as though worried she might vanish again. She had that effect on people. "I wanted you to see something before the screening." He handed her the prints. They were still warm from the machine. The first was the image she'd requested. Her and the 3 children under the streetlight, faces half-lit, eyes full of something unnameable. Belonging. The second was a candid from the rooftop garden. Ava kneeling beside a young girl, both of them laughing at something out of frame. The third was different. It was from the match. But not the swing. Not the victory. It was the moment she stepped away from the crowd, just after the putt, glove dangling from her hand, back straight, face turned to the wind. Alone. Unbothered. The caption Lyle had added? She didn't win. She returned. Ava exhaled, slow and long. "I don't need to be in your film," she said quietly. "I know," Lyle said. "But the world needs you to be." She handed the prints back without another word. But she didn't walk away. Lyle took that as permission. The documentary premiered at a local theater 2 weeks later. It was modest. Folding chairs. A rented projector. A few educators, parents, and curious strangers. And yet it felt monumental. The opening scene was simple. Jordan swinging in slow motion. Ava's voice over it. "The shot's not about force. It's about memory." The film moved through the events with care. Not sensationalized but sharp. Honest. It cut between footage of Ava coaching, the championship match, the press storm, and quiet moments at the youth center. Sweeping floors, tying a kid's shoelace, watching Jordan win. But the most powerful scene was the one Ava never expected. A montage of kids. Some laughing, some crying, some simply staring into the camera, saying one thing each. "She made me feel real. She taught me to wait. She looked at me like I wasn't invisible. She didn't talk much. But I heard everything." And then, silence. 30 seconds of uninterrupted stillness. Just Ava, sitting on the garden bench, eyes closed, hands resting on her knees, the city reflected in the glass behind her. The screen faded to black. And the audience didn't move. Not at first. When the lights came up, no one clapped. Not because they didn't want to, but because they couldn't. The story had lodged itself in a place deeper than applause. A few people cried. One man whispered, "She changed everything, didn't she?" Jordan stood in the corner, arms crossed, eyes damp. Lyle wiped his own before looking over at Ava. She hadn't stayed for the whole thing. She had slipped out around the halfway mark. True to form. Outside, snow had begun to fall. Ava walked the edge of the lot, her boots crunching in the new powder, her scarf tied around her neck. She paused at the corner, staring down the long avenue where the old shelter once stood. Now it was alive. Not just with lights and doors but with futures. She didn't want thanks. She didn't want followers. She wanted permanence. That was the twist Owen Mallister had never understood. She didn't want glory. She wanted roots. The next day, Jordan announced he would be stepping away from competition for 6 months to help train youth golfers full-time through the Elridge Foundation. He refused interviews, declined sponsorships, and instead worked with Ava to develop a new training program. They called it Presence. Not because it was flashy, but because it was everything she had ever taught him. One evening, while reviewing applications for the spring cohort of the Foundation's new residential program, Ava came across a name she hadn't seen in years. Malik Mallister. 12 years old. Owen's nephew. His file came with a note from a social worker. Mother in rehab. Father not involved. Currently under guardianship of elderly aunt. Ava froze. The name sat on the page like an old wound. Then she turned to the final page of the application, a handwritten letter in awkward cursive. I like golf because it's quiet. People at school say I don't talk much. I want to learn how to be better at stuff without needing to be loud. I saw a lady on the internet who made everyone listen even when she didn't say nothing. I want to be like that. Ava closed the file. She stared out the window, the early dusk blanketing the city in blue. And then, without a word, she placed the file on top of the accepted stack. No revenge. No conditions. Just continuation. Spring arrived not with fanfare but with a quiet thaw, melting snow into the soil Ava had walked for years in silence. At the Elridge Center, tulips began to poke through the rooftop garden, and the laughter of children once again filled the courtyard. Ava sat alone in her modest office, windows open to the morning breeze. Her desk bore few personal items. A small bonsai she kept alive out of ritual, Jordan's championship ball in a glass cube, and the original unedited still photo, her and the 3 children under the streetlight. She touched its edge now, not to remember but to remain grounded. Across the hall, Malik Mallister stood beside a putting mat, gripping a child-sized 7-iron. His brow was furrowed in focus. Jordan knelt beside him. Don't swing to impress, Jordan murmured. Swing to feel. Malik nodded, then swung. The ball curved, rolled, and stopped an inch from the cup. Jordan raised an eyebrow. You been practicing without telling me? Malik grinned but didn't answer. He was quiet like Ava. Watchful. From the doorway, Ava watched, arms folded. She didn't interrupt. She just observed. In Malik's swing she saw a ripple of something deeper than talent, reflection. A boy carrying legacy not by name but by choice. Owen Mallister's name was never mentioned here. It didn't need to be. What Ava saw in Malik was possibility, untainted and unburdened. She stepped away, allowing the moment to belong to the child, not the past. 2 weeks later, Ava received a letter. Not an email. A letter. Handwritten. The penmanship was rigid, deliberate. To Ms. Ava Elridge. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect acknowledgement. But I needed to say it. You beat me. Fairly. Years ago and again now. I couldn't see the value in your silence then. I do now. And my nephew, he's not like me. Let him be his own man. For what it's worth, I hope he becomes someone you believe in. Owen Mallister. Ava stared at the letter for a long time. She didn't smile. But she didn't shred it either. She placed it in a drawer alongside a small box, one that contained her old glove, the torn article, and the scarred scorecard from that underground desert match. Then she locked it away. Not to forget, but to let it rest. That summer, Ava was invited to speak at the National Coaches Summit in D.C. She declined, again, but surprised everyone when she offered to send someone in her place. Jordan delivered the keynote. He spoke not of championships or headlines, but of stillness, of mentorship, of the spaces between words where learning lives. At the end he held up his phone and played a recording. Ava's voice. A swing isn't just motion, it's memory. The course will remember your name, your ego, your errors. But if you play with purpose, it will also remember your intent. And that's what makes a player immortal. The room rose in a standing ovation. A few people wept. And one coach whispered, she'll be in the Hall of Fame by next year. But Ava didn't care about halls or plaques. She was in the courtyard that night, helping a group of kids plant new lavender bushes along the fence line. She knelt beside Malik, who handed her a trowel. Coach, he asked, how do you know when you've made it? She paused, fingers deep in soil. When the game stills inside you, she said. And you don't need to swing to feel seen. Malik nodded as if he understood. Maybe he did. In late autumn, a final letter arrived. This one was from the city. The Elridge Foundation had been awarded a lifetime grant for its work in transforming disused land into community havens. The letter came with an invitation to a ceremony at City Hall. Ava didn't attend. She sent 3 kids in her place. They stood on stage in their best clothes, read a short speech they had written together, and ended it with a sentence that Ava had told each of them at one point. You don't have to be loud to change the world. But you have to be here. That night, Ava stood in the rooftop garden again, this time surrounded by rows of glowing lanterns the children had made from jars and battery lights. They swayed softly in the breeze, each one with a note inside, small messages of gratitude, jokes, dreams. She read one. Thank you for teaching me that I matter even if no one claps. She folded the paper and placed it in her pocket. The scar on her palm itched, and for once she welcomed it. A reminder that healing wasn't the absence of pain, it was the transformation of it. She looked out over the city one more time. Not searching. Not running. Just present. Some victories are not measured by scorecards but by the lives we touch when we choose courage over comfort. Ava Elridge didn't just beat her rivals, she beat silence, shame, and a system that never wanted to give her a voice. And when the world demanded she perform, she planted something instead, something that will grow long after the cheers fade. As Ava once whispered to a child, "You didn't win it. You took it back." If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe to True Echo, where the quietest voices leave the loudest legacies. Share this video. Leave a comment. And let the echo reach someone who needs to hear it.